live. Broadcasting live on the Double Wide Network. It's time for The Real Deal. Join the ambassador and special guest hosts as they put together great guests and honest commentary on a range of issues. One of their main topics will be preserving Native American tributes in sports team nicknames. Also avid fans of music and the arts, and they'll always make time for a great song or two. Now, it's time for The Real Deal. Here's your host, the Ambassador.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The Real Deal in the Camelback Towers at the Star Worldwide Networks in beautiful downtown Scottsdale, Arizona. I hope everybody's having a good week. We've had as well. I actually have two producers in the house tonight. I have Kyle Pratt. Hi, Kyle.
How's it going, everybody?
The son of the famous Dave Pratt, the owner of Star Worldwide. And then we have the lovely Wendy West, who is in with us tonight. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
It's great to have you back.
Thank you.
Well, she's such a lovely producer, and I just want to say that last weekend I was an invited guest by her and from Star Worldwide to attend the Film Stock Film Festival in Tempe, Arizona. And we attended the 2-day event in the VIP reception. I met a lot of actors and actresses as well as producers from all over the country. I guess, did you see the part where they were taking my picture? They thought I was a producer because I had that black cowboy hat on.
I thought that was awesome. I wasn't going to tell them anything differently.
Yeah. So they were taking my picture. And evidently there's a guy that attends that festival that has a black cowboy hat like mine.
Really?
Yeah. And,
okay.
and they were taking my picture and they thought I was him. and I'm taking all these pictures. They had a cameraman there, a big camera, and he's flashing pictures of everybody. And finally I figured out, I says, no, I'm not him. And then Wendy would say, no, this is the ambassador. He's at the Star Worldwide, the #1 show at Star Worldwide. And we produce his show. Oh, okay. So that was all cool. And so Wendy, said, she told him we have the #1 show down here. And I actually, did you meet the Mexican actress that was sitting there with me?
Yes, I did.
Marciela,
yeah.
And so, she introduced herself to me and she says, I'd like to get a shot at starring in your next film.
Oh.
Yeah, she said, I'd like to, try to, do a part in your next film, or at least try out to do it. And I looked at her and I says, darling, I'll tell you what. I says, when we get ready to shoot, I'll have my people get a hold of your people, and then we'll just take it from there.
Oh, my goodness. You are so wrong. I love it.
But then I said, ladies and gentlemen, our other guest is here with Norris Thomas. Is our co-host tonight is Vernon Parker, and Vernon is the former mayor of Paradise Valley, and I'll be introducing him formally here in a minute. And say hi real quick, Vernon.
Hola.
That's good. I like that. Hi, Norris. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, Norris.
That's all right. I'm not Mexican.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
And neither is he.
Yeah, neither is he.
Well, let's debate that, my man.
Hola, precioso. ¿Cómo estás?
Oh, bueno.
And I'm Swedish. I'm Swedish.
All right.
Muy bueno.
So I was when you walked in, Vernon, she took me, she's an actress.
I can see that.
Yeah. And so she took me to the film festival in Tempe last weekend, and she won an award. And we'll talk about that. But anyway, I did get to sit down with James Lee and his wife, and very nice couple.
Oh, aren't they wonderful? They just got married a couple months ago.
Oh,
They're
really?
fabulous, yeah.
Yeah, and they do this show, or they do this festival all around the country.
Yes. And a couple different, 3 different states? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It is. And he said that there was like 2,500 films submitted and there was 50 selected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it would be. It is such an honor to be able to be part of Film Stock, but also even a greater honor to have your film being featured on Film Stock.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. And evidently you've had him down here at the studio, right?
Yes, I have.
Well, he's going to come in. He knows all about the real deal now because of you and me.
Well, got to pay it forward,
my son is a senior this year at the USC Film School.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So he could be looking for some good talent. You never know.
Yeah, hey, send him my way. You know where I work. I work here. We're good. So,
Do you like my smile?
I like your smile.
It's a Pepsodent $1 million smile.
You got that New York Giants smile.
Yeah. Well, 20 years ago, yeah.
But anyway, I sat down, Wendy and I sat down with James Lee and his wife, and he'd been here in the studio, and he knows what I do. He knows about the real deal, and he mentioned that we should do a documentary on the name change scam,
that's a great idea.
on what the real deal does here. And I told him, I says, I think that would be awesome. I said, OJ had the trial of the century. We could have the elaborate scam of the century, because this is what this is, an elaborate scam against Native Americans and social and cultural genocide. And we'll see if we can get Halbritter, the fake Oneida, and maybe Adidas to underwrite it, because they will be the subject matter in the film if we do it. But then we went on later. Wendy received the Barry E. Wallace Award for outstanding service to Arizona film. Tell me who Barry E. Wallace is.
He's actually one of the founders of Film Stock.
Really?
And he really wanted to recognize people that really help out the film community, of course, the Arizona film community. Because one thing about the film community in general, it's very small. But you really need to unite, help each other out, do everything to really keep the art moving forward. Because you figure, even in our schools, they're not spending, there's no more funding for the arts.
Right.
So what we do is we do our best to pay it forward and really, put the arts out there and help support the film community.
I think it's great. Is there a lot of films made in Arizona?
Yes, there are.
Are they?
Yeah. There's a lot of shorts being made, but there's also a lot of full-length features. You'll also notice there's even the Discovery Channel had, I think they filmed 10 different episodes here in Arizona. Right now, actually, I'm in a Netflix series.
Right, yeah, I was gonna
It's
mention
called
that.
Summer Sales, and we're filming the majority of it here, and then parts of it we're going to film in Las Vegas. Yeah. So.
Is that the one where you play a porn star?
Actually, okay, this is really funny. It is a comedy. I am a stripper that does not remove any clothing, that does not know how to dance, and has a very bad attitude.
My kind of stripper.
I mean, it's my kind. I'm like, okay, and I'm not going to take any clothes off.
Well,
Score, count me in.
So is that sales with the ALES or AIL?
Sales, SALES.
Oh,
So it's called Summer Sales, and
so this isn't a boating movie.
no, it's all about it's about a company. It's a Mormon company that does their sales during the summertime. Then they have the rest of the year off. Well, they figured that if they hired non-Mormons to be able to make more money. So it's a comedy about the people that are not in their religion that they ended up joining. Me being my character being one of them, and
You're a Mormon in the movie?
Oh no, I'm just an ex-stripper that has a bad attitude and doesn't know how to dance. And I joined their company to do door-to-door sales.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Are you selling the Book of Mormon?
No, they're selling what is it? Bug equipment to exterminate bugs and all that. So it's that type of thing. And it's just what happens, and it's going to be good.
Like an ex-Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Okay.
Yeah, but not that nice of a figure.
I respectfully disagree.
Oh, thank you. So what they're doing is in next month, they're going to have it available on Netflix. So if we have enough people who check out the show, you're going to have to go in the search engine on Netflix and search Summer Sales, watch it. And if enough people watch it, then they're going to have us do the full first season. If that takes off, then we'll see what happens from there. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm going to be on Netflix. Booyah!
Sail on.
Works. Yeah, I have Netflix.
Netflix and chill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I like it. Well, that's great. And thank you so much for taking me along and inviting me as your guest.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I really appreciated meeting and hanging out with your friends, and we're going to have them. We're going to have several of them come into the studio here, and we're going to do a show with James Lee.
That would be so awesome. He is freaking amazing.
Yeah,
he's funny.
Yeah,
dude, he's funny.
Yeah, and so we're going to have you here and him and some others, and talk about Film Fest and how the Real Deal can get involved to help promote that. And he's all for what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's totally behind what I'm doing here. So with that being said, we're going to move along. I always try to recognize the teams that honor Native Americans, and I want to thank the Kansas City Chiefs, the Washington Redskins, Golden State Warriors, Atlanta Braves, Cleveland Indians, Chicago Blackhawks for listening and honoring Native Americans by using the names. They are coming after you guys. Make no mistake. Now Adidas is in the fight, and they're coming after the teams. The Washington Redskins is first. You guys are next. United we stand, divided we fall. So we all need to band together because these guys are billionaires, and we're not billionaires, and we're here trying to spread the word and hang on, and we got the #1 show at Star Worldwide, so we got to be doing something right. So with that being said, I always shout out to my Navajo brothers and sisters at Navajo land. Yate Dene, Nahadani Ambassador Dennis Yellowhorse and Shehadish Padana, Akwetzalah 505, Akwetzalah Flagstaff Redskins, Akwetzalah Navajo Nation. Way to go, way to go. Thank you for listening. Akehe, Dan Snyder, Gatekeeper, Jane Halbritter, Adidas, Klinkpapit, Ma'i. They're wolves. And the wolf is a bad symbol in Native American culture. And I also want to shout out to all the Yaqui Indians south of here in southern Arizona and northern Mexico. Viva Yaqui. Buenos tardes, amigos. And I also want to thank all our listeners all over the country, Lancaster, New York, Wilmington, Delaware, Deshimony, Pennsylvania, Goshen, Indiana, coast to coast. We're making new friends all the time. Also want to say hello to the American Indian Center of the Great Plains, Johnny Leonard, and I'm a founding member along with him, as well as we're founding members of the Native American Guardians Association. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that, so you'll know about that, Vernon. Eunice Davidson, she's an enrolled member of SUE, is the president. Mark Yellowhorse is vice president. Andre Bilodeau, who's going to be on in the second half, is going to be talking about what they're doing with the Virginia caucus, teaming up with them, and him and I are also corporate officers. Again, Star Worldwide is the fastest growing internet radio station in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, there's almost 200 shows here now. Kyle, tell our listeners who's #1.
That would be the Real Deal, Ambassador.
That's right. We're the Real Deal. So with that being said, I want to introduce our next two guests. My very good friend, Vernon Parker. He is lives here in he was the mayor of Paradise Valley, and I'm gonna let you, I have a hard time reading this, so I'm gonna.
No, it's okay. I mean, real briefly. I mean, I've served 2 presidents, which was really nice. I served in the White House for President George H.W. Bush, and I also served as an assistant secretary for civil rights at the United States Department of Agriculture for George W. Bush, where I did a lot of good things for a lot of the communities that we're going to be speaking about. And as you said, I was the mayor of Paradise Valley, and I got 70% of the vote there, Chief. And I remember I got the quote of the year in the Arizona Republic, because when I won that race, what happened was that the Arizona Republic called and they said, "How does it feel to be the first African-American mayor in the town of Paradise Valley?" And my retort was, I didn't rely on that vote to get me over the top. For those of you out there, if you don't know what Paradise Valley is, I think we have like less than 1% of African-Americans.
And 1% Native Americans.
And, you know, I mean, one of the thrills of my life was that when I ran for Congress, and I barely lost that race, but when I did run for Congress, I had a chance to give the rebuttal to the president in the weekly radio address. And so President Obama gave his radio address, and I was selected by then Speaker John Boehner to come along and give the response. And and you know what? That's generally held out for members of Congress. So it was a very special time to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you've contributed a lot to our community, and I live in the town of Paradise Valley, and we've been friends for a long time, and your wife and I, and we're just very honored to have you here as a guest. And I know you feel the same way I do about what's going on with these name change scam. And I think you eloquently put it the other night when you said, I don't subscribe to that.
Well, the reason why is that when you look, if you dig deep and dig very deep, you'll see that just like a lot of the other politically correct things that are going on in the country, that it's all about, follow the money. And that's all you have to do. Follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. And you can tell where this is deriving from. But because you know what my thoughts are, Chief, is this, is that if the Native American communities, the nations, if they are not upset about it, then why should I be upset about it?
That's right. That's exactly right.
And so, you're carrying the torch, because I can tell you this right now, having known you for as long as I have known you, if there was something offensive, if there was something that brought your people down, you would be the first person out there, and you would be protesting, you would be holding up signs, you would be doing everything that you could to rectify that situation. But that's not the case, because when you look at it now, I trust you, and I trust,
well, thank you.
And so I trust where you're going on this topic and this issue, and it's just unfortunate that we live in a society that we have to be politically correct and adhere to things that we should not have to. Right.
Well, I know that's the way I feel, and Norris, I think you eloquently put it a couple weeks ago when you were here, when you talked about what you stand for and as a motivational speaker, and maybe you can reiterate that because it was very well put.
Well, here's the thing: when we're out and we have the opportunity to speak, whether it's corporate or in the high schools or wherever it is, we talk about the mission, the daily mission, mastering the mission. Everybody's got kind of the same vision. If in football, there's 32 teams. There's one trophy. That's the vision. And whoever masters their mission, the daily stuff, that's the people that's going to do well. In our regular everyday life, the people that are mastering their mission, it's the everyday stuff. You're washing the dishes, or you organizing your time, and so on and so forth. Those are the kind of things that bring on the success. But as it relates to this and the topic of name change and so on and so forth, it can easily be skewed, easily strayed. And if you don't have a clear-cut vision and a clear-cut mission of what it is that you truly stand for, then anything that can be said, especially because media is what it is, it can easily be swayed. And I think, we talked about this before. The bottom line of this is education and information. Right. Let's make sure we get the right information and make sure that people are educated, so that way they can go about their everyday lives and either, I'm quite sure there could be some people that are offended, but it depends on how the message is portrayed to them to make you feel offended.
Right.
Okay? If I'm sitting here and I'm eating McDonald's and you say, you know what, McDonald's, they fry their fries in X amount of oil or whatever, when if I don't look to see that it's actually something different, then that's misinformation. So I'm going to go with that. Now all of a sudden I'm not going to McDonald's missing out on some pretty good French fries. So that's a big piece of it.
Right.
That's a very good point, because people vote with their pocketbooks, If you don't like it, don't support it. I mean, that's been my theory forever. I tell people all the time, that if you don't like something, then you have a right as an individual in our society to either adhere to it or to go against it. As long as there's no government intervention. As an attorney, I've always said that if there's no government action, and this is a private sector, private industry deal, then, people should be able to do what they want to do. And if the government, because there's no constitutional, prohibitions there when you're involving individuals as much as it is with the federal government or with the state or local government.
Right. Well, our mission here is to educate, not eradicate. That's what we really believe in here at The Real Deal and the Native American Guardians Association. And we've been very successful, because people want to hear the other side. They want to hear what we're saying. And, this Annenberg poll that was taken several years ago, 92% of Native Americans all over the country that were polled supported the names, supported every one of them.
Wow.
And the Annenberg poll is probably as trustworthy as you can get.
But you don't hear about it, though.
Yeah, that's the problem.
You don't hear about it
because the media wants to keep the racism, play the race card.
If I didn't hear that, the first thing that I would have thought was that all Native Americans are against it.
Right.
Because it's not getting out there.
Right. Yeah, and we've tried our best to get it out there. We talk about it on every show. But the media finds the racism, the race card, with the word Redskins and the Chiefs and all of them, they play that one up because it's easy. It's easy for them.
Well, even on a bigger scale, and this is, I'm going way out in the stratosphere on this. Let's explore what the definition of patriotism is, or the patriot. Patriot was actually opposite of loyal, yet and still the New England Patriots are like one of the most favorite teams in the country. But in the back in the day, if you were a patriot, you were considered someone that was a rebellion and that you were not a loyal person, yet and still people are rewarded for their patriotism in our country. So, even on a bigger scale, beyond just the name Washington Redskins, why aren't we really looking at, let's do a little bit more research on that,
right?
While we parade, nothing against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, nothing against their success.
I don't like them, but
yeah, I know. But let's look at that. And let's look at the definition of patriot before we attack and carry a banner about, Redskin, which, on a even bigger scale, those same Redskins help those same Patriots.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't know, and Andre Bilodeau is going to be on the second half here. He wrote the book, How the Redskins Got Their Name, and he lives in Virginia, and he's a historian. He's retired Coast Guard, but he wrote the book, How the Redskins Got Their Name. But what a lot of people don't know is they don't know the history that there was a Native American tribe up in the Northeast that were called the Redskin people, the Redskin Warriors, and they helped the colonists defeat the British. And they painted their skin red. And there's actually pictures of them. If you go into the archives,
wow,
you can see pictures of these guys, and they had red paint. They used the bloodroot.
Wow.
And they would paint their skin red. So that's where the term Redskins come from. And the word Oklahoma means redskin. Red people.
Right?
Yeah. So, it's just misconstrued and pumped up, and then you have these people out there for their own personal gain who's going around to these football games and protesting. And the next one's going to be January 7th when the Redskins play Dallas. They're going to play Dallas in Dallas, and they'll have protesters there protesting, "I'm not your chief, I'm not your mascot." And I was at a game about a month ago in Washington, D.C. I think I told you about that. My nephew and I went down there, and what people don't realize is the Washington Redskins don't have a mascot. They have a logo. A mascot's where some cartoonish guy out there running around the field with a big headdress on, hooping and hollering. They don't have that. The Kansas City Chiefs don't have that. And the Atlanta Braves don't have that. And all these teams don't have that. They have these beautiful logos that portray Native Americans, on their helmets or on my hat over here or whatever. So it's just a total fraud. It's a total scam. And one of the guys that's behind it is this Ray Halbreder. He's a fake Indian. He bought his way into the Obama White House with $35,000 a plate dinners. And he actually owns an Indian casino up in Oneida, New York, and he's not even an Indian.
Wow.
He stole the casino, and this is all factual. And we're calling him out. And he's a billionaire. And he owns cigarette shops, and he goes around the country, parading around the country, and now he's in California bribing politicians out there, and he successfully got AB 30 passed and signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown, and that law is to ban all of the names of the schools in California that have names like the Redskins, the Chiefs, and the Braves, and they're banning them. And it's totally a violation of our First Amendment rights.
It really is.
You as a lawyer,
Oh, absolutely. And it's really funny because the other day I was asking someone from Tennessee. I said, so your team in Tennessee is called the Tennessee Volunteers. And they said, yeah. I said, well, where'd that come from? I mean, because I was very curious. And they said, well, it was, during the Civil War that, people who volunteered for the Civil War. Now, I know what side Tennessee was on in the Civil War.
Sure.
But if they want to be called the Volunteers, I don't care.
Right.
Call yourself the Volunteers. I mean, it's just, we're getting to a stage right now where we see more and more, as I call them, professional people who are being paid to protest, professional protesters.
That's right.
Just like, like if you go down in our great town here, if you go on Camelback and 24th Street, you'll see shame on someone's son.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, wow, that's pretty effective. And then you talk to the folks, they have no idea why they're holding the signs for.
Right.
But they're getting paid for it.
And they're usually unions.
Yeah,
I think.
it is. Shame on this, shame on that.
Shame at the builder.
One time I was walking by and I said, so I said, so what did they do? They said, I don't know. I'm paid to hold the sign. So we have to get away from, this mentality that we can be paid to protest. And, if you have a legitimate gripe or you have a legitimate protest, God bless you. Do it.
Right.
But when you start getting dollars involved, then to me, that is where we have the issue. That is where we have the problem because because it's not for real. It's all about the money.
Right. Well, at these protests here where these name changers, this Halbretter, he flies them around. He has air-conditioned buses that takes them out to the University of Phoenix Stadium. They have professional signs. They're wearing Adidas shoes, very expensive shoes, and they're paid to be there. They're paid actors. That's what we call them. They're paid actors, and they're there just to be there and to show up. Yeah. And what we have to do as we got to turn ourselves around from the silent majority,
that's right,
to the vocal majority. And get in front of these people's faces.
Well, that poll was phenomenal. I mean, I had no idea that poll was
that's all documented.
Mm-hmm. And then when you have like someone brought up to me the other day, and you're football. I mean, the Seminoles. I mean, the Seminoles embrace.
Sure. They sponsor that.
They sponsor it. That's right.
Yeah, they do.
Right,
Yeah, they do. They sponsor that team wholeheartedly. They've been sponsoring it for years, and I know the chief down there, Chief Billy, and I'm trying to get him on the show, and as well as some other members. But when you call down there and you ask them what if they're going to change their name, they just laugh at you. They said, "We're not changing our name. If you don't like it, don't watch the game."
Right.
You go change your own name. They're very well respected, and they put a lot of money into the Seminoles, the Florida Seminoles.
Well, I mean, I think even along those lines, and there's documented issues where you had Jameis Winston get himself in some trouble, or coaches they say had lost control of the team and so on. That is not a representation of the Seminole Nation, the Seminole tribe down there. That is those young men, and they are also not a representation of the university, although they are part of the university. So what would be more devastating, dropping the name Seminole because you've got people who are not of Native American background that are getting themselves in trouble, and then all of a sudden now you don't have the Seminole name. So now there's no more awareness of the Seminole region down there. I lived in Dothan, Alabama, growing up, which was not very far, maybe an hour from Tallahassee. I mean, as soon as you get within, spitting, rock throw of, right in that area, everything is Seminole. Everything is Seminole. And why lose? You kind of want to keep that. If that's what is, one of the basis of our country, and it's a part of the fabric of the United States. Why are we trying to get? I know there's arguments, but why take that piece away? It's no different than some of the African American history that's not told.
Sure. That
we don't know the full story. So, hey, let's push this back under the carpet. And move these guys out of the way, so that way now we don't have any record or any recollection that, that the Native Americans had existed or so on and so forth. I just really believe that as long as it's available to you and it's done in an honorable way, what's wrong with having that? What's wrong with having that? And I know there are people, like I said, maybe there are people that are offended by it, and then there's also, like you were saying, Vernon, there's people that's getting paid, and a lot of people just don't have all of the information. Let's get people educated, I think, so that way once you have the education and you still are salty, then okay, I can live with that. But don't just say it just because this is what's been put before you. I mean, media has changed so much, right? We could sit right here on our own phones and put together and edit together a film or tape of whatever we wanted to, put it on YouTube, and it's out there just like that.
Right.
Good information or bad information.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, I think you've been aware of it, Norris, but I don't know if you have, Vernon. They're going across the country, these name changers, because they know the teams won't budge. The teams tell them to go to hell. Mm-hmm. So they pick on these schools. They find these schools around the country and they target them. And I'll give you an example. Lancaster, New York, up in northern New York, and these people have been on our show, I don't know, 20-some times. They were on our show last week. Well, they just stripped their name away from them. They come in and they bribe the school board. They come in with a sack full of money, bribe the school board, and they'll have some guy that's not even an Indian saying, "Did you know that this word Redskins is offending us? It's offensive to Native Americans." And some of them say, "Really? Oh yeah, it's offensive. So you really need to change that name and do the right thing."
Incredible.
Yeah, and they did.
They do it.
Yeah, and they do it because they'll get to the school board. But they did that in Lancaster, New York. Here, this town. I believe, what they say, it was 68 years, Kyle?
Yeah, 68.
Yeah, 68 years. They had their name, the Redskins, Lancaster Redskins. Beautiful tribute to Native Americans. I mean, beautiful logos, very professional, and no mascot. It's all a logo, and it's all tradition. And these people are their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their children, their grandchildren are all going to this school. So they just stripped it away from them last year. They didn't let no input from the community. They just said, "We're taking it. We're changing it," and they did. So the people are so pissed off that they've been on this show and they consider this show the platform for them to speak, and they all listen to our show. That they don't like it. They feel they got screwed, and they're going to change it back. So what they did was there's 7 school board members, and last summer two just incredible women that have better things to do, pro-Redskins, want to get the name back, run for the school board and won. Okay? So now this May, there's going to be 2 more that's going to run, and then they'll win, and then they'll have 4. Yeah. They'll have control, and then they're going to be the first town in the country that's going to change their name back.
Wow.
So that was number 1. So then they went to Wilmington, Delaware. You know where that is.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a school there. It's called the Conrad Redskins, Wilmington Conrad Redskins. Been the Redskins for 70, 80 years. Same thing, same group, same characters. Pay them off, get rid of it. It's offensive. It's offensive. And so they're fighting the fight right now, and we've been helping them. And they've been on the show several times. We give them a voice. So then they went to Neshaminy, Pennsylvania, which is up by Philadelphia. Same thing, except that we get out ahead of them. And we get out ahead of it now because once we get wind of it, where they're headed, then we head them off with the real deal, and we get to contact them immediately, and forewarn them that, hey, there's help on the way. It's not what you think. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of people, Native Americans and non-Native Americans, that got your back, and so they then they listen to us, and then they feel like, God, you know, maybe, you know, we're not alone. You know, maybe. You know, because they think they're being racist, and they don't know they're being racist, and they have nobody else to turn to tell them, to educate them that these are paid actors.
So how has Daniel Snyder dealt with this? Because because it seemed a while ago he was under a huge spotlight, and
I'm sure he still is.
You've worked with him, yeah.
Well, he still is.
But
I would imagine.
But he seemed to have weathered the storm somewhat.
I mean, I personally don't know him. I've never met him. But he's got this foundation, the American Indian Foundation for Native Americans, and he's doing good things for Native Americans. He's helping them, and I think he got a nice awakening to find out that the big tribes like Navajo, the largest tribe in the United States where I grew up, and my wife was Navajo and kids, and he found out that nobody has a problem with that name. And then he found out that 325 miles north of here, up north of Flagstaff on the Navajo Reservation, there's a school called the Red Mesa Redskins. And all of the kids are Navajos and Hopis, and that school's been that way for 100 years, and nobody's offended. And then he found out about 60 miles from there, there's a school called the Shiprock Chiefs, and nobody's offended. Then he found out there's another school called the Tuba City Warriors, and nobody's offended. So after he come out here and he really started probing into it, and then he went up to Montana, to Browning, Montana, because that's where the logo, the original logo that the Redskins wear today, was drawn up by the Blackfeet Native Americans in Browning, Montana. And I met some of the descendants of the gentleman, and about 12 of them worked on the logo, but there was one guy that was instrumental in getting the logo on that helmet. But it was all done professionally. It was done by Native Americans. It was blessed by Native Americans. And their first coach was Lone Star Dietz when they moved from Boston to Washington, D.C., and they were the Boston Braves. And then they became the Washington Redskins, and their first coach come out of the Indian School Carlisle, where Jim Thorpe was at. And the first linemen were Native Americans. So when they start digging into the history, I tell everybody, well, Dan Snyder didn't create the logo. He inherited it.
Absolutely.
But he's taking heat because the name changers are giving him hell, and the media are playing the race card on him, and he don't back down. He tells them, I'm not changing the damn name, and if you don't like it, you go jump in the lake. And I'll tell you, when I went to that game 6 weeks ago or whenever it was, I'd never been to have you been to a Redskins game?
Oh, many times, yeah. Yeah. In D.C. when I lived there. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. I'd never been.
Oh, it's quite the
It's
experience.
electric.
It's quite the experience. I'm sure you know that.
You've been, haven't you?
To a Redskins game?
Yeah. You played in it.
No.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
I'd never been. And I'll tell you, it takes a hell of a lot to impress the chief. And I went in there, and it was electric. It was absolutely electric. When they scored a touchdown and they were running around with these big flags and everybody singing "Fight for Old DC." I mean, it's history.
Yeah.
It's history. I mean,
I used to go to the old RFK Stadium.
Did you?
And that stadium would literally rock. I mean, it would sit there and you could feel it. The stadium would move. Because,
really?
The fans are more fanatical than anything that
Oh,
I've
my
ever
God.
seen.
Well, they told me, they said, you know what? The Redskins sell more gear and more merchandise than any NFL team, and I believe it. When I went in there, they had buses in the parking lots for tailgating, big buses with Redskins on them. I mean, these buses were there for partying. I mean, they weren't going around town hauling people around unless they just brought them to the game. But, I mean, it was like the tailgate party of all time.
Right.
And I was over there, and I tell everybody, I says, every Native American should go. That should be on their to-do list. They should go to a Redskins game, and when they leave there, they're going to be proud of how the Washington Redskins fans recognize the name Redskins. It's all done in good taste, and I kind of poked fun at the name changers because I said I was looking for that mascot the whole time.
No, there isn't. They're dressed in dresses. They have the little. I remember back in the late '90s, early 2000s, they had the pigs' heads on. They were dressed in dresses. The hogs. Yeah, that's right.
You bet. Well, Dennis, we talked about this on Veterans Day when we were last
Right,
here.
that's right.
Veterans Day. And also, hey, a quick shout out. This is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
All shout out to those families that lost loved ones.
That's right.
On that day. But getting back to my point, and we talked about this on Veterans Day when I was here.
Right.
I went to University of Wisconsin La Crosse. We were the Indians. That was our mascot. The mascot was changed, and the marching band was called the Marching Chiefs. So they changed the name of the school, or the mascot now is the University of Wisconsin La Crosse Eagles, okay? And the marching band is now called the Screaming Eagles. Now, one of the things that's kind of, if that Indians was found offensive, and that's fine. I love the Eagles. I played as an Indian and I played as an Eagle.
Right.
But the term lacrosse, that's a Native American game. So our city, which is La Crosse, wouldn't someone kind of, do we need to go? I'm hoping no one wants to go back in and change it. And I was just listening to you. It's almost like people are choosing their battles to go after certain entities instead of,
right.
If it really means that much to you, then there wouldn't be any reference to Native Americans or the word Indian. And I always, when they started the whole petition about the Indian, just saying Indian in of itself, I always kind of thought that was a little far right. Just me personally, so that's a little different because now that strictly is more of a race. But when you talk about Redskin and you say Chiefs or you say other names other than, straight Indian, you're not really talking about a race of people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong, right or wrong on that one.
No, you are.
But, are we going to change? You don't want to, people are always looking for something offensive. If you now, do you change the city of La Crosse, which is a great, beautiful city? In fact, Mark Twain called La Crosse, Wisconsin, one of the most beautiful places in all of America. The place is crawling with bald eagles all over the place. I mean,
really?
It's gorgeous. Sits right on the, western end of Wisconsin.
I've never been there.
Mississippi River is right there. Just beautiful. Sits in between the bluffs and the Mississippi River runs right there. Just gorgeous. Just a beautiful place. And I'm pretty sure it's called La Crosse because that's what the Native Americans called it.
Well,
and it's always been La Crosse.
There's so many names up there. Like when the chef was on here from Milwaukee, that was here with the consortium.
Right.
He talked about all the different names because there's so many tribes up there.
Mm-hmm.
Up there in Wisconsin and in Chippewa,
Ojibwe, yeah,
Oneidas, Chippewas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're all up there, and he was talking about it at length. In fact, his family, he married a Native American, and his kids are Native Americans. But he was talking about that as well. All the different names, and what are they going to do? Change the name of the state of Oklahoma? These name changers here a couple years ago, they were actually down at the city of Phoenix, telling them that they need to change the name of Indian School Road. Can you believe that, Vernon?
Oh yeah, I can believe it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and
wow.
Indian Bend Road and the Squaw Peak Parkway, and just on and on and on. And of course, everybody down there just kind of looked at them like they were nuts, and told them to take their cause somewhere else. But they were all carrying these professional materials and professional signs, and that's when like you said, they're paid actors.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of hard work in front of you. I mean, it's just because you're going up against billions of dollars. You're going up against a liberal media that's going to try to say that, what's being spoken about is 1,000% correct. There's no mention whatsoever about what Native Americans really believe. But let me ask you this. Do you have any Native Americans out there who've been bought off too, who are out there with them? Or?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'd love to hear you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's, this one girl, her name is Amanda Blackhorse. And thank God her name ain't Yellow Horse. I'd really be up the creek. But no, she lives at Navajo. She don't even speak the language. And she's their front person. And they pay her. They fly her around the country. And they pay her to go to these protests. She'll be at the one in Dallas. And she's a total fraud. She don't even speak the language. She don't even speak her own language.
So she could not be elected to any office.
Oh, no. They wouldn't elect her to dog catcher up there. In fact, she lives 50 miles from this school I was telling you about. And they just shake their head. And Native Americans, particularly Navajos, they're pretty humble people, and they just kind of look the other way and say, we don't agree with what you say, but, we're not going to attack you over it, but she'll attack them, and she'll come down here and she'll be at the Kansas City Chiefs game or the Washington Redskins game when they played here a year ago. And people would ask her, well, what about that school? What about all those Navajos up there to go to these schools? Well, they're uneducated.
Oh, my God.
They're ignorant.
Jeez.
That's her excuse.
If you don't agree with me, you're uneducated. If you don't agree with me, you're ignorant.
Yeah. And then she would scream. She would scream obscenities to Native Americans going into the game that had the Redskins gear on. She would scream, call them racist, call them traitors, backstabbers.
Jeez.
Yeah, she's just pathetic. There was a tailgate party out here at Ernie's Inn over on Shea, and I went to that, and there was about 7 of them. She had a microphone, a megaphone, screaming. She started screaming at me, And I just went over there and got in their face. I had a sign that said something. I don't remember what it said. I just stuck it in their face and walked off. But, I mean, it's just pathetic. You know, I mean, these people are so ignorant. And so I think it was Mark or somebody said, you know, where'd you get all these fancy signs? You know, and finally they said when we come back over there, one of the leaders, because they'll have some of these guys from the American Indian movement who are total losers. They'll have one of them with them, and he'll tell them, hey, here they come, shut up, don't say anything, because they're recording you, you know, or they're videoing you. So don't say anything. So they'll just sit there like a bunch of dummies, you know, and they just sit there signing, and they won't say nothing. And then one of them, we asked one of them, and he said, well, where did you get these signs? I mean, these are expensive signs here that you're carrying. And he looked at me, and he says, we rob banks. And I thought, I said, yeah, that's the Bank of Halbritter. But, I think we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to have Andre Bilodeau on, so you can get him in the queue. Over, why don't we get on this Real Deal Airlines and fly us over to Virginia, and then we'll land the plane, and then we'll take us off. You didn't know I have an airplane, did you?
Yeah.
Oh. Would you like peanuts?
That was a short trip. So let's go in the terminal. We'll freshen up a little bit, and we'll be right back. But you know what the problem with these name changers is? You see them
can't handle the truth.
That's right.
Broken looking glass.
Okay, we're in Virginia, ladies and gentlemen. And how you doing, Andre?
Hey, Ambassador. Good evening. We're looking forward to Monday Night Football tonight against the Dallas Cowboys.
That's right.
First place on the line in the NFC East. Good
Right.
stuff.
Yep.
How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. The mayor was just here. Vernon Parker, he had to leave, but you'll hear him Wednesday night when the full show comes on. And he gave a good talk. And then, of course, we have Norris here. I think you talked to Andre before, didn't you, Norris?
Andre,
yeah, you did.
yes.
You did?
Hi, Norris.
Yeah.
No.
Right. Oh, you didn't?
Okay.
No? What?
Well, how do you do? Okay.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
subliminal.
From the Commonwealth of Virginia,
It's
the
that,
fine state of Arizona.
that
Hello.
Jedi mind trick. Yes,
I
no.
love it. This is the friend you're wanting to talk to. Yeah.
Right. Hey, Andre, why don't you give our audience a heads up on what's happening with NAGA and Virginia Caucus, if you would.
Yeah. Thanks, Ambassador. So what happened with NAGA is we were pretty adamant about the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond in the trademark case of the Redskins, and we went ahead and crafted amicus brief, which is the Friends of the Court brief to accompany the team's efforts, and it was signed by our president, and we went ahead and sent that in, and it's gained some attention here in the Washington, D.C. area metro media, and with that, the Senate leader, one of the Senate leaders of Virginia, Senator Peterson out of Fairfax County, and his Pride Caucus, which I think has about 20-something legislators from the state of Virginia, including a mother of one of the active players for the Redskins, have gone ahead and endorsed the efforts of NAGA in our production and writing and collaboration in doing the amicus brief and in promoting the overall cause of bringing education to the masses. I mean, the name changer movement has had several years head start and a lot of money behind it, but here you have an organic group of Native Americans from several tribes who are concerned that this change movement does not speak for them, and so they formed NAGA, and now it's nice to see that state leaders in Virginia have paralleled our efforts and somewhat adopted our cause. And I guess you could 180 that and look at a contrast with the state of California, with some of the legislators out there, and actually the governor, who both took money from Adidas,
Right.
who wants to gain a larger foothold of sales in North America, in approving, running through the State House and Senate and up to the governor's signature back in November, AB 30, which outlaws the name Redskin, I think, and other tribal names at state high schools, which was run through pretty quick with the help of Ray Halbritter. And again, we're looking at some of the open secrets materials that showed that Adidas actually did contribute campaign funds to some of those legislators that voted for AB 30.
Right. Convicted felons.
Yeah. Oh, man, the FBI. I mean, if you've got to reach over from Germany and pick some legislators in California that you think you can influence, you might as well go off the FBI hit list of those who would actually take such money. And it looks like that's exactly what they did. So here we are. The Redskins are poised, especially with tonight, if they can beat the Cowboys. And the Giants lost in a miracle game yesterday against the Jets. And it's kind of a domino effect. What will happen is they'll probably end up in the postseason. And with the narrowed amount of NFL teams to look at, the anticipation is that the change movement will go ahead and double their efforts to launch the messaging campaigns against the Redskins in the postseason. And that said, we are nothing but a volunteer organization, very organic,
Right.
that the natives in NAGA will do their best to raise their voice and do their best to educate. And I'm glad to see that the state of Virginia has aligned themselves with NAGA's sentiment of education over eradication.
Right. No, I think that's good. And then I met Chapman when I was out there.
Yes.
Yeah, nice man. He's been on the show, and he's going to be on the show. we had a short window to try to get them on today because I got to leave for New Mexico. I got business to do in Gallup and Santa Fe, so that's why we're doing this show Monday, but the listening audience will listen to it Wednesday at the time slot.
Well, I think the important thing here to remember for your listeners is simply this: money talks.
Right.
And the counter campaign that's trying to actually even the score and actually get some parallel coverage in the debate. There should, if we follow the Native American Great Law of Peace, the chiefs who, the chiefs who helped establish the Great Law of Peace up in the Iroquois Nation, the blueprint for the American Constitution, would say that they really need to hear both sides of any issue without interruption, without modification, to make a reasonable and a rational decision. Unfortunately, what we've seen is the major media outlets in this country, including newspapers and TV stations, have done their best to censor the vast majority of Native American voices. Especially, not all tribes had red-painted warriors, but many did. They celebrated both in just ceremonial use and in pre-battle use, the use of red body paint. They've really been kind of pushed back and nullified as far as having a voice. But they keep trying, and they keep trying to equal the voice of the paid positions of those who follow Ray Halbritter and some of the key politicians on the federal level of the Democrat Party. But this is one of those times when the Redskins, if and when they do enter the postseason, that the voiceless will have a voice. And through efforts like yourself at The Real Deal, and of course tomorrow the sister station, The Beating Drum, will give these natives a voice to talk about their culture, their history, their compassion, their understanding of the name. And while it may not be perfect in many eyes, to some, the use of in some cases of those fans who dress up with an Indian headdress or native headdress or war bonnet, that's still frowned upon, and we're doing our best to educate. While it is imperfect, it does represent a fine culture and the right culture for Native Americans to have a voice in popular America. Whereas, the non-Native culture has many voices, whether in NFL, let's look at the Cowboys, the 49ers, or the Patriots. In each of those cases, each of those teams represent a name who can be looked at historically as not benefiting Native American nations. Look at the 49ers, for instance. Many people may not even think about the huge land claims that California 49ers, 1849, the gold rush in California. What happened is that a lot of natives in California got pushed off of their traditional lands as gold mining and prospecting essentially pushed them off their lands. Whereas, like the Cowboys, one of the biggest factors in reducing the levels of natural bison range, where they used to be great herds of bison from which some of the Western tribes would use as sustenance, Cowboys, at a minimum, were responsible for stringing along barbed wire, an invention that happened in the late 1800s, which reduced the range of the buffalo immensely, and it essentially contributed greatly to the demise of the free native nations out west. And of course, the Patriots, as we know, the Native Americans helped the Patriots learn how to fight in a woodland way, helped essentially set up the U.S. Special Forces today in the woodland warrior tradition. But after the U.S. won its independence, the word patriot was used at times for an American warrior from the United States government who would venture west and essentially at times fight Native American nations. So even the term patriot can be looked at with some suspect from a Native American historical perspective. That name itself might not be the best, but of course, keeping everything in perspective, there are a lot of good issues that came with the name Patriots as well. So here we sit today in 2015, debating history.
I touched on that earlier. just in the fact that the definition, or back in the day, not even amongst Native Americans, but as an American, if someone that was considered an American, the word patriot was basically the opposite of loyal, which, what do we know about the so-called settlers that came over from Columbus? A lot of those people were pilferers and thieves, and those are the people that came over who were essentially patriots because they were not loyal to the government in England in and of itself. So the term patriot in early America was not something that was looked upon favorable, even amongst people that were here. And I'm not just talking about the Native Americans. If you look up the definition of patriot, it's opposite of loyalty. And so, while we celebrate the New England Patriots, I'm not so sure people need to do their homework.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, if you want to find offense with any name, I mean, really, you can drill down, and almost as you've seen some of the funny memes that populate the internet, you're absolutely right. There's a million ways to dissect and dice and find offense with almost everything. And to the term patriot, if you take it apart, you've got the term, was it riot? Right in there. I mean, if you're a loyalist, part of patriot includes riot.
Correct.
And so the loyalist in colonial, I think the Tories, those who were loyal to the crown, found, of course, that the patriots were very offensive in that they didn't follow the laws of the land. They didn't want to do the tax on tea or paper. They didn't want to house British soldiers in their homes. And, whether or not you think that crosses the line, it was the law of the land at the time. And who would the Patriots turn to figure out how to defeat, at that time, the world power, the armies of Great Britain and the navies of Great Britain? And by virtue of their friendship and mimicry of the red-painted warriors of the Iroquois Confederacy or the Algonquin tribes, they learned woodland warriorship and essentially what have become the tactics and training of defeating a European army in open battle, where you didn't march in a line, you didn't succumb to the harsh hierarchies of, from king to commander to sergeant to private. You had some independent thought in woodland warriorship. You knew how to last and have some kind of endurance. You learned how to hit and run and move to the next and take out supply depots and get back alive, and that's right. What the colonial warriors learned, and that's why, again, in the NFL, the lore of the NFL names, there is no finer name or more historic name than the Redskins, which represent the red-skinned warriors of the Northeast. Right. This country owes them a debt of gratitude, and so this ongoing debate about it's racist, it's this and that. It doesn't even represent a race. It's a subculture. It's a subset of Native warriors. And
but it's also eventually you can.
I didn't hear your.
Essentially,
I didn't hear your earlier part of the show tonight, but I'm sorry if I'm stepping on some.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I mean, the scary part about it is you take away these names, and now you take away the history, and now it's something that now we don't even have any attachment to.
Right. It's an attack on our First Amendment rights. Where does it stop? That's what.
Well, true. Yeah, and yeah.
That's what Dr. Jacobs said last week. Pretty soon we lose a piece of this, we lose a piece of that, and it just it don't stop, and we can't just sit here and be complacent.
It's death. They say death by 1,000 cuts, and specific to the Native American. They were the dominant nation set in the North American, even the South American hemispheres, and now they're down to we're arguing over the few vestiges of popular culture that represent who they were, and within the Naga frame, it's educate, not eradicate, and
right.
While you may supplement or change. The mindset is keep what you got and make the most of it. And if you can make things better, let's look at Willie Wampum, for instance, from Marquette. Back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, the organic change movement actually was a very positive thing. And their original goals were to take some of the ridiculous mascots off the sidelines, either change them and make them authentic or get rid of them.
Right.
And in the early 70s, if you look up, I'll ask your listeners to look up Willy Wampum, just type it into your smartphone and see how silly that was. And it was offensive. And the original change movement, for NAGA, we can agree with that. That needs to be augmented. Did it need to be changed completely to some kind of animal? Perhaps not. But what you've lost is a generation or two now, since the 70s, of students who are in higher learning without a pivot point to learn about Native Americans and what that regional Native American history is and what it meant to North America, what it means today, and what it means to our future. And again, I alluded to earlier that this country owes a debt of gratitude, and wherever possible, there should be an understanding of the greater philosophy of what this continent produced, where we came from. The finest North American democracy ever created was a Native American democracy, and the Great Law of Peace, and the Iroquois Nation.
Well, no,
and so
those are some really good points, and a lot of people just don't know. But that's why we give them the show so that they can get educated on a lot of the subject matter. But unfortunately, we're running out of time here.
We're running out of time. That's exactly right. The house is on fire, and I'll get back to, I think, one of the core issues here is the decolonization movement. When the organic movement that did put pressure on the mascots such as Willy Wampum, it was appropriated, politically speaking. It was appropriated a year before the 2012 election, essentially by the federal level of the Democrat Party, in line with Occupy Wall Street. The timelines and the benefactors, those who paid for the movement, are essentially the same. And you see that there's a range of headlines that are race-based and tension-based. The idea is to create tension in the American media, to get out the vote, to cause change, to make people feel, or to give them a reason to get out to vote or participate. But unfortunately, what we are and have seen is those who listen aren't getting the full story. They're absolutely not getting the full story. For instance, one of the primary talking points for them is, the Redskins mascot is offensive. Well, as you know, as you searched the Redskins stadium, I watched you. You walked around and around. You talked to people, talked to security. We're down. You're kind of looking at the cheerleaders for a while, maybe a little too long, but then you went up top, talked to some of the security guards. There's no mascot at the stadium. The Redskins don't have a mascot. So to say not my mascot, what they're missing is that the feature on the side of the Redskins helmet is a legendary Native chief, and it was proposed and marketed by senior leaders of the Native American tribes.
Right.
That happened in the early 70s.
Right.
So, I mean, at the very beginning of the argument, not your mascot, that is... it's what they say is it's a canard. Yeah. It's a false front. Yeah. And then, of course, you go down, Redskins mean bloody scalps. So it doesn't. Matter of fact, the change movement's own linguist specialist debunked that in federal court. It does not mean that. I know. I know. And so you can go on and on. Right.
And then trust me, I looked high and low, and Andre can validate that. I mean, I was even questioning those cheerleaders. Come on. You gotta cough it up. But anyway, Andre, thanks for coming on. We run a little overtime, but thanks for coming on. I'm headed for New Mexico. I'll be in touch. I'll be on the cell, and let me know what's going on, and then we'll go from there. But thanks again for coming on and enlightening our listeners. Norris, thank you for coming.
You bet. Hey, everybody, check out norristhomas.com. I'm booking engagements into next year already. And wrapping up a book titled Standing in the Tunnel, From Fatherless to Fatherhood. So good. Going to be pretty cool here over the next
we'll look forward to seeing that. We look forward to having you back on. And Vernon Parker, it was very nice of him to come in. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of the road here. As always, The Real Deal can use advertisers, sponsors, financial help of any kind. We're not billionaires. We're up against billionaires. And anything and everything would be appreciated. You can go to our website, yellowhorse.us, www.yellowhorse.us, or email us at info@yellowhorse.us, or you can call 602-540-3000 for advertising on The Real Deal. Again, 602-540-3000. And also our other companies are yellowhorseindustries.com and Humate International. That's HUMATE.com. And we supply organic products from Navajo Nation to growers all over South America, Latin America. It's for any plant. You can resell it. You can use it on your farms and fields, parks, whatever. But if you can help us out, we sure would appreciate it, because we are in an uphill battle with people like Adidas and these other name change maniacs that are in it for their own cause. So with that being said, I guess we're out of time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And so, Kyle, why don't you just tell our listeners one more time why we're here?
To kick ass and save names, Ambassador.
That's all we got.
Thank you for listening to The Real Deal. Tune in to The Real Deal with the Ambassador and special guest hosts every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and on demand 24/7 right here on Star Worldwide Networks.